Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, fans of metaphors around the world. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Today we have absolute boatload of stories freshly loaded from the dockyards of the technological world, and we're headed for the open waters of the internet. And who better to direct this cargo ships through the headlands than our very own captain of the helm, Matthew Dickerson. Welcome to the bridge, Captain.
Well, you're thinking of yourself then. You do like your metaphors with your intros, don't you? So were you thinking of yourself when you think of metaphors?
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, I haven't got a metaphor for you, but I have got a little story that gives a practical demonstration or a practical example of something we talked about some time ago. You may remember we did a story about the idea of having things like garbage trucks with cameras on them so they could detect the condition of the road.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
and then feed that information back. And garbage trucks made sense because in an urban area, you're covering pretty much every bit of bitumen in an urban area every week or every fortnight, depending on your routine. So I was at a conference during the week, and they actually had a video of an example of this being used in a trial. So it wasn't just theoretical, someone's come up with this idea and we'll talk about it a little bit. They actually said, right, let's go and fit some of our trucks with it and let's watch. And it was actually really good because
you got to see it in action.
You've got to, but you've added a bit of AI now. So what they did was they had this garbage truck going along, they had cameras set up to it, and then that was feeding back with an overlay. And the overlay, as it drove along, no blemishes on the road, nothing would show up. And then suddenly a pothole would show up and it would light up on the screen and it would have some conditions about the pothole, so the diameter of the pothole, that type of thing, or a crack would show up on the road, and then that would light up on the screen. What they then did with all that information, and this scared some of the people in the room because some of these people are responsible for these roads, it then gave an overall number and an overall condition of the road. So, for example, the garbage trucks finished their rounds for the week, so this week you've got 1,928 potholes and various sizes in terms of different categories there. And so some people in the room were going, well, we don't love that idea because now we're going to see just how many potholes we've got out there.
And we are really accountable.
We are accountable to those now. And more to the point, if we know how many we've got out there, we've got to try and work out ways to fix them all. Yeah. If it was a different reporting mechanism, maybe a different way of doing that. But I think in the long term, the beauty of it would be if you can get to those potholes when they're a 10 centimetre pothole rather than a 50 centimetre pothole, then it's cheaper, quicker, easier to fix that. What I'd love to see on this truck, and then it probably wouldn't be a garbage truck anymore, it'd probably be a dedicated truck, but I'd love to see something that as it drove along nice and slowly, there's that 10 centimetre pothole as it went past it and just filled it in.
A bit of asphalt in.
I might be dreaming a little bit there now, and maybe there'd be a limit as to how large they could be before you needed a bit more of a skilled operator to do it rather than just an automated process. But it was fascinating watching this video of this truck as it drove along and just popping up these things on screen with, as I say, a bit of AI and looking at those. The other one I didn't know, and I didn't, there were a few questions being asked of the person giving the demonstration or showing that off, and I didn't get to ask a question, but I wonder about the effectiveness at night time. Are there lights on the truck? Is that enough for it to show up these? Is there some other way? Are they using some sort of infrared?
Yeah, they might not be using light in the visible spectrum.
Yeah, the video that we watched did, but again, that might have been for demonstration purposes, but it could be using infrared. It could be needing to be done during the day, and depending on when your garbage trucks do pick up. But I just thought it was, as it started to come up and this session was coming, this is cool because we've talked about this, but I haven't actually seen one of these trucks in operation.
But you're getting feedback on the condition of your roads on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's right. So you could have a process that just said, this week you need to go and attack these potholes in these locations. They're the worst ones we've got across our roads at the moment. So every week you'd be automatically triaging the worst parts of your roads, and then away you go. So, and I did like it. I did like the demonstration. It was quite fascinating.
We're living in the future. Well, today we're spotting landmines from hefty heights in a bid to save lives in war zones of the past. We've got a user review of the Volvo EV truck in action, which might interest people trying to green up their freighting perhaps. And we're going to take a peek at AI's very own blooper reel. But enough of this flagrant effort to tantalise. Let's get busy bringing in the news. Now, with my rapidly ageing ears, the collateral damage of those ridiculously loud concerts of the 90s, I find myself more and more frequently these days leaning in and begging pardon. I'm sorry, what was that? Poor hearing, I've got to say, is such an inconvenience, and few things make me feel older. Well, bring on the new AI headphones, the hearing aid of the modern era. Matt, James Bond could have really used these nifty little gadgets. These are straight out of the MI5 spy lab.
They are, except he would have looked a bit funny wearing cups over his ears, because at the moment they're still in cup form.
Yeah, right, but we can shrink those for sure.
Give it time, that's right. And I'm sure Am would have shrunk them immediately, because it was the movie, so it didn't have to be real.
Q would have been.
Sorry, not Am, that's right. Q would have shrunk them immediately. So one of the things that I found fascinating many years ago was the first time I ever put on noise-cancelling headphones. I remember the day, I don't remember the exact day, but I remember the time. It was in Los Angeles. I was been at a conference in LA, as a Microsoft conference I've been in LA, and there was a friend of mine sitting there in the airport, and he had these big, cumbersome cup headphones. I was going, what are you doing with those? Look at how clumsy and big they look. He said, no, these are noise-cancelling. Have a go. And I put them on, and I went, yeah, big deal. And he said, no, you turn them on. I turned them on, and I went, wow. Every bit of background noise just disappeared. And I went and bought some there and then for my flight back home to Australia, because I just thought that was so cool. I had to have some. So that was great. And we kind of understand now, that was a long time ago, but we kind of understand the basics, where it's basically creating a sine wave that's the opposite, if you like, of the sound waves coming in.
So it's destructive interference, and it cancels out that noise.
Exactly right. So that's fantastic. And I actually find if I'm sitting on an airplane, for example, with the background noise, and my wife's sitting there beside me with the same noise-cancelling headphones, we can have a bit of a conversation. We're not yelling at each other, and other people presumably can't hear unless they're wearing noise-cancelling headphones as well, because we don't have to talk as loud. So that all makes perfect sense. But now, researchers at the University of Washington have come up with something ever so slightly better. What this does is it does the same noise-cancelling, except it then says, I'm going to allow certain frequencies through based on you looking at someone and saying, I want that voice only. So I look at you in a crowded environment. I talk to you for about 5 seconds, or I don't talk to you, you talk for about 5 seconds, and then that will isolate your voice. Now, I wondered...
I need to teach it who Matthew is, right?
That's it.
I just want to hear Matt's voice.
Yeah. And then in a crowded environment, you could walk away a bit further and I'd still be picking up your voice. Now, I did wonder initially whether it was doing this just on frequencies. And I thought, well, sure, you might have someone with a very low-pitched voice, very high-pitched voice, but you've probably got most people that are speaking around the same type of frequencies. But it does a bit more than that. It does look at frequencies, but it also looks at the intonation, or listens for, not looks at, but listens for the intonation, the way you say things, and then using all that, it allows that voice through and not the other voices in the room.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? It's crazy. So I love the...
I've got to share. I saw a brief video of this, and this guy was testing it out, and he was, listening to a conversation. He said, "Look, I want you to cancel out that baby's crying in the background there too." Bang, switched it off. It was just amazing to see this.
Yeah. So I thought it's quite fascinating, and it's sort of stuff you see in a James Bond movie, in a spy movie, where you just put the headphones on and you're listening to someone on the other side of the room going, I'm hearing every word they say. It reminds me of a Seinfeld episode where they used lip reading to try and work out what someone was saying on the other side of the room, which was completely wrong. So one of the things that I thought about this was interesting as well is that I've got a friend of mine who's deaf in one ear. And the main problem that he talks about is that he doesn't have stereo hearing. He's only got mono hearing. What? In a crowded environment, he can't tell where sounds are coming from. So he has trouble focusing on someone's voice in a crowded environment. So in general, in that stereo sound, if you dropped a pen somewhere, he would go, it was a pen dropped somewhere.
We do that. We use the two ears to be able to locate stuff by sound.
That's right. But again, with one, you've only got mono.
Yeah.
But that's been, when I've talked to him about it, he said the main problem he's had in his life is just being in that crowded environment. One-on-one talking to him, you wouldn't know. He's fine. Just doing normal things day to day, fine. But in a crowded environment, that's where it's a problem. So for him, again, might look a bit funny, why are you standing at a cocktail party with a big set of cups on? Well, you don't need one, I suppose. But that's where I thought it would be perfect to actually tune in. Yeah. And again, miniaturization is probably the next step in this whole process to get to the stage where it is just an in-ear bud as such, and something that does that same job. I'm sure that won't be that far away to getting to that point, but I thought it was quite clever. They do talk about the fact that It's good for partial hearing loss, people like that, like I described. Talk about enhancing conversations in noisy areas. And eventually, what they're hoping for is that one of the big brand name headphone manufacturers says, I like that technology. Let's go and buy that technology off you, University of Washington, and we'll integrate that into headphones. They're not talking about trying to manufacture themselves. They're saying, let's go out there and get some other partnership going. So I can hardly wait until we can see that product.
I tell you, in the classroom, I've got a noisy electric fan. It's got a noisy or electric heater, I should say. It's got a noisy fan in it. And so a kid might ask a question, and then I can't hear. I've got to walk away and ask him to repeat the question. But how cool would it be just to say, I just want to hear this? And
try and convince the kids that you're not really listening to music. You are trying to hear them better.
I can use them tomorrow. Landmines are cruel and a random hangover from the fields of conflict decades after the guns have fallen silent. The task of detecting landmines is an enormous challenge, perilous and devastatingly destructive. Remember, these things are purposefully designed to go undetected until they complete their terrible task. But would you be surprised if we were to tell you that you can now literally spot them from space? Matt, this is quite some eagle-eyed vision.
It is, and I think of Princess Diana when she was still alive. This was one of her big projects.
First of all as well,
yeah.
Yes.
So she obviously was really focused on it, and she has been around with us for a long time, and there's still a major problem. In fact, they estimate that there are still 60 countries around the world that have got landmines, they're contaminated by landmines. And back in 2022, 4,710 people were injured or killed.
Yeah.
Can you believe that many?
Well, look, all throughout Central Africa, where they've had lots of trouble with civil war over the past 50, 60 years, there's so much rich history. We're talking about paleontological history that we'd love to tap into, but also so much archaeological history of human civilization as well that we'd love to tap into. It's just too dangerous to get in there because there's so many landmines buried.
So it's pretty scary. And as you can imagine, 85% of these victims are civilians. So it's not like you're in a war situation. Not that still makes it better in some ways, but you've got people out there, kids out there being killed by landmines.
Long after the leaders have shaken hands and made up, you've still got these things that are designed to be undetectable.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, there's a new tool, a new AI tool. We keep talking about AI being good, being bad. Well, in this case, let's give it a tick for being good. It's a new AI tool called Desk Aid, and the AI in Desk Aid is written in uppercase, obviously, because it's got to be something
marketing.
a bit... Yeah, that's right, marketing, exactly. So it's called Desk Aid. And effectively, what this does is uses satellite images. We're talking about satellite images from the past as well. So, for example, declassified US spy satellite imagery from the 1980s using current satellite imagery, looking at the comparison between these two, but also throwing a bit of AI in the mix, looking at where other landmines have been. How close are they to roads? What sort of terrain are they on? So it's not just about the terrain being ever so slightly different, because obviously no matter how good you are, digging a hole, putting a landmine in, filling it back up very carefully, there's going to be some change in the landscape there. It doesn't get to the stage where it can say there is a landmine in this square centimetre, that's the exact spot, but it gets to the stage where it says, well, this field has got landmines in it, and by the way, in this field, we estimate there'll be here, 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 and here. The removal is still a manual process with humans. What a wonderful job that would be, hey? I'm pretty well suited up, but I'm still not sure how well this is going to go for me.
Well, they've got a number of different methods, and I was actually reading into this, and even the methods of removing them are destructive. They've got these big armoured bulldozer type things that just go and destroy that whole field.
Yeah.
They use dogs to help them out. It's just, I don't know, there's so much danger.
And we've seen a few robots, and again, that's great because you're not harming an individual, but you build that robot and it gets one slightly wrong and got to build another robot. But this satellite imagery using Desk Aid, they're saying has got about 92% accuracy at this stage. So it's not something you'd say, oh, that field, that was given the green tick, everything, go out there and play a bit of soccer around there and away you go. You'd still want to make sure you used other methods as well. But as an initial method, it sounds like a pretty good way to actually just look at large-scale information. And this is where I think AI, one of the things that I get excited about AI, we as humans could look at those photos, look at these other photos here, and we'd go, they look okay. But then when you get AI in there, just the crunching of the amount of data.
Yeah.
We just don't have the simple brain power to crunch all this amount of data and come up with a logical conclusion at the end. But that's where AI has just got that ability to crunch so much data. If we can do this and remove some of these landmines from around the world, what a wonderful thing.
Amazing. Well, AI has come to the rescue time and time again for so many of us over the past 18 months. But for those who are gung-ho to take up AI options without any thought for cross-checking, well, you might just find yourself regretting your faith in a technology that has no accountability. Everyone loves a good blooper reel, Matt. So how has Google's Gemini been faring?
Well, I think they kind of got to the point with Bard where they went, we'll give up on this and come up with a new name because we've lost a bit of market value because how badly Bard went. So they've come up with new things, Gemini, AI Overview, but they still seem to be plagued with some of the same problems. And when you start to talk about trusting AI and then seeing how you go with it, it gets a bit scary when you get advice like putting glue in your pizza sauce. Using rocks, consuming rocks if you're training for a marathon.
Yeah, may the buyer beware here. Like,
may the buyer beware. And I do know at the bottom of these sites, ChatGPT is the same. It says, by the way, the information you have here may not be accurate. Well, what's the point? Just give me the accurate stuff then. So the problem here is that
Don't
you
put
and
glue
I.
in your peaches, folks.
No, that is a problem, definitely.
Yeah, right.
The problem here is that we look at things on the internet and we're humans and we've got some life experience and some common sense and we put all that together and we read an article and we can work out sometimes, mostly, whether it's something that's been well researched, good sources of data, or maybe a joke or a satirical post or whatever. When you've got this AI overview reading information off the internet, it just takes it all as fact.
Yeah.
So we often joke about, it's on the internet, it must be correct. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. So in this case, there are a couple of examples there, and these have been posted by various people. And again, I want to make a pizza sauce from scratch. And so it gave all the ingredients for that, including the non-toxic glue at least. The rocks and nutrients was an interesting one. And there was a satirical post that talked about nutrients, minerals, just go and eat some rocks. It was designed to be funny. It was designed to be a funny post that someone had written. But again, it was on the internet. Therefore, when Google soaked up that information,
It's information.
Someone said, I need better nutrients for my marathon events. What should I do? You should go and eat some rocks. Fantastic. How nicely do I know to crush them so I don't hurt my teeth when I'm eating these rocks? So it's that type of thing. Now, some of those you can probably say that people would go, maybe that's not quite the right advice. But if you didn't know your chemicals, for example, another bit of advice from AI Overview was to mix bleach and vinegar. You mix those two together, you get chlorine gas. Maybe not such a good thing to do. And not everyone knows bleach and vinegar. That'll be fine. I got it off the internet. AI Overview wouldn't give me the wrong information. I'll mix those two together and then chlorine gas, not so good for you. So this is a bit of the problem where you're just taking whatever information you find and mixing it all in together. How do you get around that? I mean, ChatGPT seems to have done a better job of not giving you information that's just plain wrong. I've seen information, don't get me wrong here, I've seen information that has been wrong from ChatGPT where it's got factual information wrong about the year of something, but giving this type of advice where it's dangerous potentially advice, I haven't seen ChatGPT go that far.
Yeah, I mean, what's our defence is education, right? So I keep coming back to it. Yeah, we've just got to be smarter about what we do, folks, and just not take things on face value.
Well, I do I've used your example.
It happens too much.
A lot. You'll start charging me for this soon when I say to people that you often say that for your students, for example, when you're doing a calculation and you use your calculator, you should have an idea of the vague order of magnitude of the answer. If you're expecting the answer to be around 10 to 20 and it comes up with 10,000 or 20,000, you go, doesn't sound quite right.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to do the same with any information you get off any of these AI tools. You have a vague idea of what the answer maybe, should, could be, and you get an answer that is kind of around that, and you think, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. You get an answer that's completely wrong, like glue in my pizza sauce.
So surprising.
Maybe not so much.
Educating people on how to be discerning is a tricky thing.
Well, that's a good one. Educating AI tools on how to be discerning, that's even trickier. When you read the information, make sure it's trusted, sensible, reasonable information. How do you do that? I don't know, look at the author of it, but then do you like some authors, not others? It's tricky, isn't it? So,
But yeah, building a boat, anyone can build a boat. But whether or not that boat's going to float requires a bit of experience, doesn't it? And a little bit more teaching, you know?
That's right.
So I mean, from personal experience, as a young fellow, we tried to build some rafts that we tested out, and they didn't work, yeah? And so we learned from that. But, you know, you just you can look at a set of instructions, and if they've been written by a clown that doesn't have any experience in building boats, then we can guess how it's going to go. So, I don't know, teaching people how to be discerning is a tricky thing. And look, we see it in social media all the time, and people grabbing stuff from posts and just taking it on face value and reposting it straight up. Oh, it's frustrating and worrying.
And worrying, that's right.
Now, did you ever pick up an earworm and just could not place the song or name the artist? That couple of bars can just dance around in your head until you are numb, and that can last for days. Well, YouTube Music has you covered, because all you need to do now is simply hum, sing, or play to the app, and you can stave off that insanity with just a bar or two. Matt, it's still no solution for the tone deaf, but at least there's some hope.
Yeah, I'd love it to be a solution for the tone deaf. Shazam came along and I thought Shazam was fantastic.
Yeah.
Hear a song on the radio. This is before digital radio, of course, and you go,
But you've got to be quick off the mark and have Shazam hear that music.
Yeah, correct. That's exactly right. So you're driving along as a passenger, of course, and you hear that song on the radio and you just go, Shazam, listen to that, and it doesn't need much, and you go, oh, fantastic, got it. You can imagine how that works. I mean, it's still pretty impressive, but it's got a database there of everything, if you like. Yeah. And then it just looks for those same little signals in terms of the wave of the audio data, and it goes, that matches to that song in that part of it. So it's a pretty impressive search process, but it works pretty well. Then when they came along with the idea of you could sing a song and pick it up, well, my singing is not fantastic. I won't demonstrate, just take my word for it. Think of the worst singer you know and then insert me. But when I've tried to sing to Shazam, it has had no hope. It hasn't worked at all. If that gives you some indication. This is even better, but I still wonder how it would go. And I haven't played with this one yet.
You've got to test it, folks. Test it.
Well, that's
Give
right.
it your
Everyone,
worst.
test it out. So you don't even need to sing the words. You don't need to know the song words anymore. You can just be da-da-da-da-da or hum away.
Get that earworm out of your head.
Yeah, and then, because some songs from the dark distant past you know a couple of the words out of the chorus, and then after that you go, oh, I never really understood those words because it was Australian Crawl. Not having a go here at Australian Crawl, but Australian Crawl songs, you needed subtitles on Australian Crawl songs.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, if you just have an idea of that song, that tune, you use YouTube Music and you hum that song, and it should be able to find what that song is. How impressive is that? I don't know how good you have to be with it, though. That's the big thing. So try it out.
Yeah.
Give it a crack. I'm interested to know. Give us some feedback about how that actually works. Yeah.
The challenge to harness renewable energy from diverse sources is quite the venture. It requires imagination to, first of all, identify possible sources, but then mustering the creativity and initiative to harness that energy efficiently, economically and reliably, well, that's another thing. A group of engineers have been looking skywards and have got their sights on harnessing high-altitude winds. Matt, I'm visualising kites with long extension cords here. Am I right?
You're pretty close, actually. It's not far off the mark. What they've done is they've looked at what the wind is like at different heights. Now, we know that as you get higher, typically you do get higher flows of wind. And so when they do build wind turbines, they build them fairly large. Now, that's for two reasons. One, you can put a bigger blade on a larger tower, so that makes sense. But also, they know that the wind at ground level compared to the wind at 20, 30, 50, 100 metres above the ground, it starts to increase. But it's a bit expensive to build that tower. The tower's an expensive part of the whole process. So some very clever people have said, if we've got enough wind at a slightly higher level, rather than build the whole tower to get up there, could we put something up there that stays in the air just from the wind that's flowing, and then we have some sort of blades.
Yeah, right.
that can spin. Now, you think about a glider obviously has a very large surface area of wing, and then it can stay up in the air for a long time based on some updrafts, based on a bit of movement of that actual glider itself flowing through the air. Again, you've got this huge surface area of wing compared to the weight of the actual plane itself and the glider itself. You look at a normal plane, a normal jet plane, for example. I'm actually quite fascinated sometimes. I look at it as I'm walking out to get onto the plane and look up and I go, there's not actually much surface area in real terms for this thing that's 100 tons, more than a couple of hundred tons. You're looking going, wow, it's just like a bunch of fingers push up on those bits there and that holds all of us up. Oh, well, thank goodness for science.
Thank you, Wright brothers.
Yeah, that's right. So what they've done with this is basically that they've built a glider. That glider is tethered to the ground. You need electricity to be able to get down to the ground somehow.
Yeah.
That glider has propellers on there. Now, the propellers aren't used to keep the glider in the air. The propellers are used to spin to create electricity.
This is amazing.
It is. Now, the first thing I thought was, well, how do you get it up there? How do you actually get the thing to a height? Because it's sitting on the ground and a bit like a kite, you get a bit of airflow over your kite and then it kind of takes off. Is that all it needs? But maybe there's not enough wind at ground level, so maybe they've got to get it up somewhere. I thought, well, maybe those propellers can spin in one direction to get it up there in the first place, but then you've got the tether on there. I don't know how it gets up there. So I put my hand up and go.
It gets up there.
It gets up there. So let's assume you're now up there. You've now got a device that looks somewhat like a plane with a very big wing area, very big wing surface area, and it's got some propellers that look like propellers, but they're spinning with the wind rather than spinning to actually hold that plane up in the air. Tethered to the ground, that electricity comes down via that. Much cheaper to build because you're not building a big tower for a start, and presumably getting better airflow, better wind out of it because you're putting it up to a higher level. What I love about this is it's just another one of the many solutions we're coming up with. Is this going to be the solution to all of our production of electricity problems? Probably not.
Yeah.
But in some areas.
In fact, probably not is exactly the word. I mean, you're just going to have too many things connected to higher altitude. You've got to think about flight paths and things like that.
Yeah. But in some areas, this may be an absolutely wonderful solution.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
thinking of, say, a heavily wooded area, an area where it's hard to get towers in to construct those towers, areas where you might have some things in the ground where you don't want to go and have to dig up all the ground to put these towers in, the footings, etc. A whole range of reasons. It might just be a cheaper way to do it. But we've got so many different solutions, James, and that's the thing that I get excited about. We've got lots of different solutions, people coming up with lots of different ways of doing things, and here's just another one of those things. And will it be the solution? Maybe, maybe not. Bit of it, maybe. Maybe from this they'll come up with another solution that'll be another way of doing it. Maybe they'll make it all so light that tether is enough to hold it up there to get it started. So all these different things, but it's just this human creativity. That's the really exciting part.
Imagination is a wonderful thing. Here's a story about a very fortunate coincidence for the good people of the tiny Caribbean island of Anguilla. They've been able to cash in on the AI revolution in a very surprising way. Matt, just how lucrative can a name be?
Just keep in mind that you've got different extensions for different domains around the world. And I remember a really popular one I used to have was the CC domain. When I was trying to get people to register with their domains in the early days of internet, there was .com.au, so that was fine. That was the obvious one for Australia. But the one you wanted always seemed to be taken up. And I found the Cocos Islands had .cc, and I thought, oh, that's a pretty cool one. So I actually registered a lot of clients with .cc, not the chips, by the way, but lots of other clients with .cc. The CC meant nothing of any relevance here in Australia, but it was just a way to get a shorter domain. So widgets.com.au, someone's already got that. I'll get widgets.cc. I'm not sure how many the Cocos Islands got out of it, probably a few more just in general because people were finding that as a convenient way. But in this particular situation, the domain extension .ai stands for Anguilla. Okay, that makes sense. No problem at all. .au stands for Australia. That's all sensible. But .ai suddenly is artificial intelligence. There's a big market in that. To give you an idea
Exploding market.
Give you an idea of how big a deal this is, in the year 2022, Anguilla had 10,000 registrations. Well, no, to be accurate, .ai domains had 10,000 registrations. So for a small island, that's probably reasonable. Maybe there are a few people getting on the bandwagon. The next year, 2023, 360,000 registrations with the .ai domain. And this is worth a significant amount of money. When you start to look at that, this is worth $2,250 per person per year just by the convenient fact they've got .ai as their domain. So
that's fantastic.
It is, isn't
well
it?
done to the people of Anguilla.
Exactly right. So monthly earnings, they're saying, could go up to, at the moment it's about $3 million per month, could go up to about $6 million per month from these domain names. Now, for the 16,000 residents of this island, that's not too bad. It translates to a fair bit of money per person. So just a convenient little thing. And someone went, I'd prefer to have .ai for my AI thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
We'll grab that one. No big deal there, but it soon adds up. So it's something that I can't see going away. 360,000 in 2023. I don't have any figures for this year, but it would quite easily double again. It quite easily go to 1 million
All of a sudden,
registrations.
the infrastructure in Anguilla has just started to pick up enormously.
Well, yeah, I think it could. I mean, it depends where this money's going. I suppose that's the thing. I'm not sure who is getting the money from this.
How they are able to.
If it's the government, which hopefully it is, then if they're overseeing it ultimately, then hopefully the government's able to use it for their own infrastructure rather than some other organisation there. But yeah, it would be great for the infrastructure.
The new Dubai.
It could be. Forget about oil. We've got .ai domains.
Here's an option for parents managing safer digital homes. Google has developed a password manager that is targeted specifically at families that need to share but maintain a security level that's still reasonable. Matt, how does this new password manager work?
It's one of the funny things about this. It's about password sharing. Now, I would say to people, don't share your password. That's right. Don't tell people your password. But then you get a couple of issues. One example I thought of is someone that's a loved one. They may not even be elderly, but in some cases they may be elderly, and they pass away. And then someone says, there's
their password for all the stuff.
Yeah, so I thought of something where you've got a Facebook page and people are just commenting on there and making things there, and you want to put a post up to say, thanks for all these comments. By the way, my father's passed away. I'll leave the page up for another month or so, and then I might shut down this page. And people could put some condolences on there, whatever, but you can't post on that page if you're not an admin, and then that's all right. I'll just get my dad's. Oh, I haven't got dad's password. How am I going to do that? That's right. I'll reset the password and it'll send an email. Oh, I don't know dad's email password. And so suddenly you're trying to work out some way to legitimately get into a person's account. And that was one example I thought of that's passed away. It could also be in relation to kids. You're worried about your kids. You're worried about what they're up to.
Yeah.
And you say, I want to just keep an eye on what you're doing there. And I'm not giving you my password, mum or dad. Well, just have it set up so that you can give it to me if you feel like you need to. So I don't want to spy on what you're doing, but I want to just keep a check on what you're doing. So that was another example. So essentially, you've got this concept from Google where you can use their password manager, the Google Password Manager, but you've got an option in there to say, share my passwords. Now, you share the passwords not with the world, obviously. You share your passwords only with, and I would say, 1 or 2 trusted family members. If I was going to be really pedantic about it, I'd probably say share it with 2 family members.
So around the dinner table, who's the favourite kids that get the password?
And that's the thing I was about to say. I wouldn't do it around the dinner table. I would do it with 2 family members in separate locations.
Yeah,
If I was being really pedantic about it. If I was the US president and needed to make sure that was safe because something could happen in my home, but that means everyone's gone and all those passwords are gone. So someone that lives in another location, I'll share the passwords there. And I'll share the.
Okay, clever.
But I did use that word as well, trusted. You would want to make sure they were trusted with extreme trust.
Oh, yeah.
But it does make sense. If you don't use Google Password Manager, having some way of having your passwords stored in a way that other people can access them, because it would be a terrible thing, especially if it wasn't necessarily an elderly person, if you lost a child or lost your partner and then you're still just looking at these messages. Someone else doesn't know they've passed away, for example, looking at these messages coming through or emails or dating app. Imagine people still lining up dates for them. Oh, they passed away, but I can't get onto that dating app to let them know that this person's passed away. And then if someone contacted that same person randomly, said, oh, by the way, I noticed you messaged Jimmy and I'm just letting you know that Jimmy's passed away. Sorry about that. You go, this is a scam. Like there's some scams out there and people do prey on people in different ways. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, this is not going to work for my wife as she doesn't even know her own passwords. So
that is a bit of a problem. Well, she definitely needs to share a password with someone so someone knows her passwords.
Now, if you've ever been to San Francisco, flower in your hair or not, you'd have to agree that it's one of the most picturesque cities on the west coast of the US. A pretty city, and perhaps a great place to leave your heart, some might say. Famous for its little cable cars that climb halfway to the stars, it now offers another unique experience. Its new gimmick of driverless taxis are building in popularity amongst sightseeing tourists. Matt, you've got to have your plane ticket by now for sure. It's time to go driverless taxi sightseeing.
You've got to be prepared for it, though. If you do go, so this is a tourist attraction now, believe it or not. Robotaxis in San Francisco, that is a tourist attraction. Forget about, I'm going to San Fran to ride the cable cars. I want to go up and down these hills.
Golden Gate Bridge or out to Sausalito. Yeah.
Robotaxis, that's what's drawing people there. But you've got to be prepared because when you get there, it's a bit like Uber. When you book your driverless taxi, you go into an app and you book it, but they're not taking everyone on day one. So you get to San Fran and go, great, I'm here because I want this experience. So you pull out your app and you register on the app and it says, sorry, there's a registration waiting period. So it takes about a week.
What?
Yeah, because there's too many people using it. So they've got to keep a limit on there. So you've got to wait about a week. So if you're going to go there, make sure you register on the app before you go there, at least a week before you go there. So then when you get there, you can say,
That's
right,
excellent.
now I can pull that out and I can register that and I can pull it off. And the car pulls up and you get in, you take your photos in there, your videos, whatever you want to do, and say, look at me having a great time, because you wouldn't be having a great time unless you posted a photo about it on social media, because then that's the way you know you're having a great time.
Knows. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But this is a legitimate tourist attraction. People go to places
Amazing.
for a whole range of reasons to see things. And I must admit, I do sometimes visit places that are technology or something that's a bit interesting from a technology perspective that they aren't normal tourist attractions. And the one that comes to mind is the Ostrasand and I'll make sure I get this right, in Copenhagen across to Sweden. There's a bridge/tunnel. And it's a fascinating structure. And I remember being in Copenhagen one time, need to go to the airport. I got the taxi about an hour early and I said, right, I need to go to the airport, but can you take me via Sweden? And the guy looked at me as if I was crazy, going, you don't need to go via Sweden. I said, no. But see that thing out there that's half bridge, half tunnel under the
That's
ocean?
one that disappears into the ocean.
Into the ocean. So I'm on this bridge going along and then you start going down and I'm holding myself back in the seat because I'm going, we're driving into the ocean. And it does feel like you're driving the ocean. Anyway, we go underground for a while and pop up in Sweden. I stopped there, I bought a postcard, turned around and we came across the Ostrasand again. But that sort of thing, I mean, I think that's me, but I thought that was just me because I'm a bit geeky. I would, if I was anywhere near San Fran, I'm probably not going to fly from Oz to San Fran.
Just for a taxi
to
drive.
do it. Tempting, but probably not. But if I was in America probably on the West Coast, maybe not if I was on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, I would probably say, let's go to San Fran to go on a driverless taxi. But I thought, again, that was just me because I'm a bit geeky. But it seemed like lots of people are doing it. Lots of photos are popping up. Here I'm in a driverless taxi. There goes a driverless taxi going past. There's my mum in a driverless taxi. It's a cool concept.
So much to see and do in San Francisco. I've been there twice myself before they had driverless taxis. I can now see myself going back again for the driverless taxis.
Yeah, and these ones are, just for the details there, owned by Alphabet, which is obviously Google's parent company. I often say owned by Google, but technically that's not correct. Owned by Alphabet. They're Jaguar I-Paces, so they're Jaguar EVs, and I've played around with Jaguar EVs. The thing that struck me when I drove a Jaguar EV, it wasn't a driverless one, but you could make it make pretend sounds if you wanted to. So you could change it to sound like a V8, sound like a V6, sound like a turbo, or just be quiet. I went the be quiet option in the end. And they've got radar, LiDAR, sensors and cameras, and you can sit in every seat except the driver's seat. So no one's in the driver's seat, but if you get in the driverless taxi in the driver's seat, it won't go. So
Interesting.
I'm assuming there's still the controls there.
All seats facing forward?
Yeah, they are in
okay.
this one, yeah.
Yeah, right.
But in future cars, who knows? Sit around a table and play cards while you're on your driverless taxi ride.
Oh, not while you're sightseeing in San Francisco.
Probably not.
Too
No,
busy
that's right.
staring out the window.
Night time, maybe. Maybe. Yeah.
Now, for the skeptics, electric trucks are now featuring on freight routes, like it or not, and Volvo has no plan to be left behind. Their EV trucks have been running for a little while now, and Matt has the user feedback.
Yeah, there's been a bit of feedback, but I want to talk a little bit more just about how we got here, if you like. 72% of goods consumed in the US come via truck, which makes sense, and I thought it might have even been higher than that. But anyway, there's a fair bit there. Billions of kilometres are travelled by trucks every year. And again, I was focusing on US data, and obviously that contributes to air pollution quite significantly. So there's been a bit of exploration, if you want to call it at this stage, with batteries and with hydrogen. Volvo Trucks North America in particular said, you know what, we're going to get going for these trucks and be at the forefront. They really started to focus on the last mile deliveries. And by that, I don't mean just the last mile, but the shorter distances. So not going from LA to New York, not going from Perth to Sydney, for example, going the shorter distances, because that's where the sweet spot seems to be. So they've talked about the fact that they want their trucks doing smaller runs, 100, 200 kilometres, not doing 2,000 kilometres. That seems to be where the best output, if you like, not having to have recharging stations, not having to have swappable batteries, being able to get all your work done in one day and just charge up overnight. They found the drivers, in terms of the drivers that have been using these trucks already, love how quiet they are, because I've sat in prime movers and they're pretty noisy. So they're quiet and they're smooth. And again, no matter how good a driver you are, changing gears, especially when you start off in a prime mover with a big load, you've got it in a very low ratio gear. You start off and you don't go very far. You really just, that's to get your rolling gear. And then go the next gear to get you past a few kilometres per hour. And then you slowly get to the stage where you're getting up to the gears where you're driving along at a normal-ish speed. But the smoothness and just how it accelerates, and it's so simple to drive, you don't need to worry about those fiddling gears. It just drives. So certainly that's been one thing where they've appreciated that. They have noticed with some of the testing they've been doing so far, they are wearing out the tyres a bit sooner. They're a bit heavier, so that makes sense. But in the whole scheme of things, it's not as if that adds a huge amount to the overall cost of running the vehicle because it's so cheap to run. The first Volvo electric prototype debuted back in December 2018. So we're thinking these are pretty new, but that's a long time ago. In America, they have these different classes of trucks, and that was the Class 8. Class 8's basically the big trucks, the gross vehicle weight rating over 15 tonnes. So what I'd call a prime mover or a semi-trailer. So that was when they debuted that. The first production Volvo electric truck came onto the commercial scene, be able to buy it, in 2020, and they've sold 270 so far.
Wow.
So that's, it's a
that's
reasonable
pretty
number.
good.
For when you think, oh yeah, they're not really happening yet, maybe a few, 270, that's not too bad. So they've been talking about BEVs for some time and then producing them. They've also gone down the track of hydrogen or fuel cell, if you like, electric vehicles. And when you talk about fuel cell, I've driven fuel cell hydrogen vehicles, and they drive the same as an electric vehicle because they are an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
But what they've got, instead of a big battery, they've got a small battery, and they've got hydrogen, and that hydrogen, the job of the fuel cell is to convert the hydrogen to electricity to go to the battery to drive the car like an electric car. Of course, the big advantage with that is that you've got the ability to put hydrogen in quickly. You can store a lot of hydrogen on there with some tanks on there, refuel quickly, like with petrol or diesel, and then off you go again. So you might get to the stage where across America trucks will be more likely to be hydrogen more so than electric vehicles. Then you've got a few other brands in there in the mix. Tesla obviously has got their big truck, not their Cybertruck, but their prime mover. Nikola, Daimler, so they're all getting there, for example. And some of these are getting ranges up around maybe 800 kilometres. So still not across America, but certainly still getting reasonable distance with those.
Did we talk about Scania at one stage?
We did talk about Scania, that's right, yeah. So there's a few different brands getting out there. Nikola is really focused on their hydrogen fuel cell trucks. Daimler's got their Freightliner Escadia. They talk about only maybe 400 kilometres of range, but again, that's where I think the real sweet spot of all of these is. So it seems to me like for those people who keep saying it's not going to happen, whether it be with cars, light vehicles, or utes or pickups or prime movers, just when you get to the stage where you start to break down the cost of running and even if you don't believe in climate change, the lack of pollution. So it's still going to be nicer when you see the big diesel truck take off at the traffic lights and these plumes of black smoke come out of the exhaust pipes. You think, well, if you don't believe in climate change or you do, it still doesn't look like I'd like to breathe that in. Yeah. Where you see an electric vehicle take off and you see nothing, but we actually see nothing because it's gone so quickly. So it takes
good
off.
luck to the King Canutes trying to hold back the tide, or at least get his staff to hold back the tide. Yeah.
No, it's happening, and it's happening with trucks as well.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to back this little truck into the dock and let the air brakes offer up their very satisfying psh that signals that we are done. Thanks for another cracking Tech Talk, Rubber Ducky.
No problems at all. Thank you. I'll go. I've got to make a pizza now. I've just got to get that sauce right for that. So I'll just avoid the glue if I can in that sauce.
Well, perhaps a bit of, what's the old clag that we used to use?
Well, it was non-toxic.
It was non-toxic, and so there'd be always one kid in the class who go, well, I'm eating it.
That's right. It was not toxic.
Good luck to you.
You must have been a pretty advanced school because there was always more than one kid in our class that did that.
And I'm off to put that YouTube music to the test. Going to see if it can recognise my version of Roger Glover's Butterfly Ball. Remember that one? All the people got to live together. I won't go too much further with that. You've been listening to another mint condition episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Each episode is lovingly unwrapped to avoid any unnecessary creasing, tearing or denting of the product within. We hope that you've enjoyed receiving it just as much as we've enjoyed providing it. I'm James Eddy, and on behalf of Matthew and I, we hope to catch you in another week's time for another science and technology unboxing event. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we'll see you then.